Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has appointed a former Liberal minister from the days of the sponsorship scandal to examine his own corruption scandal. And Liberals on the Justice Committee have put a stop to the committee's study of this matter. Not only is this an affront to democracy, it's an abuse of power and an attack on Parliament. All this to keep Canadians from hearing the truth. What is the Prime Minister trying to cover up? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I took responsibility for the erosion of trust between the former Attorney General and my office, and that is why it's important for the Justice Committee to be able to hear any evidence from any witness, and that is why we lifted solicitor-client privilege and cabinet confidence in an unprecedented move to allow the committee to study this matter. For 5 weeks, the committee has dealt with this matter, and the Ethics Commissioner continues to investigate. And this, the decision was always ultimately the Attorney General's to make. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
That's just not true. They carefully limited what the former Attorney General was able to speak about. They prevent her from disclosing key information during the time after which she was fired as Attorney General and the day that she resigned. Now, what happened in that space of time that the Prime Minister is so desperate to hide? He has gone to great lengths to protect that information. What is he trying to hide?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this government took the unprecedented step of waiving solicitor-client privilege and cabinet confidence so that the former Attorney General could speak fully to this matter before the committee. The matter before the committee was heard over the course of 5 weeks, heard multiple testimonies, and indeed the Ethics Commissioner is continuing his work on the matter. We have confidence in our committees, we have confidence in our offices of Parliament, and we will continue to focus on what matters to Canadians.
Order. I would ask the member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes and others to come to order and not to interrupt when someone else has the floor. Order. I have no trouble hearing the questions. I should be able to hear the answers equally well. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that's just not true. The former Attorney General was not able to speak fully about the events that happened. In fact, in a letter to her own constituents, she wrote, and I quote, "These matters are still unfolding and further clarity and information is needed." That's right. If the Prime Minister is so sure that he's done nothing wrong, then why won't he allow the former Attorney General to finish her story?
Hear, hear. Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we waived cabinet confidentiality and solicitor-client privilege so that the former Attorney General could speak fully to the matter that was being studied by committee, and that is exactly what happened. What's happening today, Mr. Speaker, is that the Conservatives are desperate to talk about anything other than the federal budget. They don't want to talk about the Canadian economy, and the reason is they have no plan for the Canadian economy. Their approach under Stephen Harper failed to trickle down any benefits to the middle class for 10 years, and we have created growth and benefits.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is desperate to talk about anything other than the corruption scandal that has brought down 2 ministers, his principal advisor, and the clerk of the Privy Council. Canadians know that he's trying to hide something, and they know that the former Attorney General has more to say. At committee, she said that she was not at liberty due to confidences to discuss any of the matters that she now indicates that she would like to. The Deputy Leader of the Conservative Party asked if she was allowed to, would she come back, and she wrote, "I would be." Why is the Prime Minister so desperate to prevent that from happening?
Honourable Prime Minister.
See, the Conservatives don't want to talk about the economy. One can wonder why. Today is Budget Day. Every year, the federal government puts forward a budget, a plan for the future of our economy, to grow the economy, to benefit Canadians. And in this House, the role of the official opposition is to challenge that vision, is to look at how they would do things differently. But they don't even want to talk about it. Why, Mr. Speaker? Because they have no plan for our economy, and we have grown the economy and created jobs.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister is going to such great lengths to prevent the full story from coming out. And in a few hours, we'll find out just how much it's going to cost Canadians to distract from his own corruption scandal. That's right. He's lost 2 ministers, his principal advisor. He's lost the clerk of the Privy Council. They are now lawyering up in the Prime Minister's office, and he's instructed his members on the Justice Committee behind closed doors to shut down the investigation. What could he possibly be trying to hide that is worse than all those things happening already?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite just admitted it, that he doesn't want to hear what's in the budget coming up in a few hours. And the reason is because they do not understand that investing in the middle class is the way to grow a stronger economy. That's what's created over 900,000 new jobs. That's what's led to the lowest unemployment in almost 40 years, Mr. Speaker. Our plan is working to help the middle class. Their plan to give advantages and benefits to the wealthy failed under Stephen Harper, and it's failing them now to actually even be able to talk about the budget.
Order. I encourage the member for Carleton and others not to interrupt when someone else has the floor. I'm sure they wouldn't want someone to interrupt them. The honourable member for Burnaby South.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians know appointing a former Liberal cabinet minister is a weak attempt to change the channel from the scandal. It doesn't get to the bottom of Liberals giving special access to big corporations, quietly passing laws when powerful lobbyists ask, and potentially interfering with a criminal trial. People deserve answers. Why won't the Liberal Prime Minister call for a public inquiry? What is he so afraid of?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, what's puzzling in this whole thing is I could see the Conservatives not standing up for workers, but the NDP not standing for workers, not standing up for jobs across the country. We have always and we will consistently stand up to defend workers, stand up to defend hardworking Canadians and the communities that they support. We will be unequivocal about making sure that we're growing the economy, creating jobs like the 900,000 new jobs that Canadians have created over the past 3 years. We will continue to focus on what matters for Canadians because that's what Canadians expect.
The honourable member for Burnaby South.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's interference scandal is taking quite a toll. In just 1 month, he has lost 2 ministers, his chief advisor, and now the clerk of the Privy Council. And he's lost the confidence of Canadians. And what's his proposed solution? A former Liberal minister who's a party fundraiser. How does the Prime Minister think that's going to restore Canadians' confidence? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Instead of talking politics, the member should be focusing on what Canadians have gained in 3 years. We have created some 900,000 new jobs. We have raised 300,000 children out of poverty. We have helped raise 825,000 Canadians out of poverty because of the steps we've taken to help their families, their communities. We've restored their confidence in the future. We will continue to support workers and to invest in Canadians. That's what Canadians expect from us, and we will keep doing it. The Honourable Leader. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister owes people an explanation. The Prime Minister is in the middle of a political interference scandal, a scandal where the allegation is that the Prime Minister pushed legislation through the back door to help his rich cronies. How does he think that Canadians can have confidence in a former Liberal minister from the sponsorship scandal days to find the truth? The Honourable Prime Minister. I think the leader of the NDP should explain, and not just to people in Quebec, but to people all over Canada, the fact that he really couldn't care less about people's jobs. We here on this side of the House in government will always work for workers. We will always defend workers. We will work with them, and we will continue to defend and invest in jobs. It may make many others wealthier too, but we will continue to work on behalf of Canadians.
Alors.
Order. Order.
Order. The honourable member for Calgary Rocky Ridge will come to order. L'honorable député de Burnaby South.
The honourable member for Burnaby South.
Deserve to know the truth. Back in 2004, it was Anne McClellan defending her scandal-plagued Liberal government. Now, we have another Liberal government plagued by scandal, obstructing the Justice Committee from learning the truth. Mr. Speaker, at least previous Prime Ministers called inquiries when they were faced with scandals. Why is this Liberal Prime Minister refusing to let Canadians learn the truth through a public inquiry?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
On this side of the House, we have confidence in the committees and their work. We have confidence in the officers of Parliament, like the Ethics Commissioner and the Conflict of Interest Commissioner. We respect the work that the Justice Committee did for 5 weeks, hearing hours and hours of testimony, and indeed, we even took the unprecedented step of providing a waiver for solicitor-client privilege and attorney-client privilege so that the former Attorney General could speak to the matter before the committee. These are things that we know Canadians need, and that is why we provided them. At the same time, we focus.
The honourable member for Milton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, the Prime Minister spins an incredible story, and indeed it is incredible because it is not true. Let's take a tale of the tape, shall we? 2 cabinet ministers have resigned from cabinet. 1 resignation of the best friend, the principal secretary to the Prime Minister, and 1 early retirement of the clerk of the Privy Council. This is extraordinary in normal circumstances, and Canadians deserve to know exactly what is going on. But this morning, the Prime Minister has made sure that the Justice Committee, the only public venue studying this matter, was shut down. What is he afraid of? Why is he covering it up?
Honourable Prime Minister, the Honourable House Leader.
Clearly that members of the Justice Committee have been studying this issue for over 5 weeks. We know that they have asked for witnesses to appear to ensure that Canadians could hear from those witnesses, including the former Attorney General. We waived solicitor-client privilege as well as cabinet confidence. Mr. Speaker, that is unheard of. It's only happened 4 times since 1987. The last time under Stephen Harper is a time where he actually didn't waive all privileges because perhaps it's the Conservatives who have something to hide. That is not our approach. We'll focus on Canadians while they focus on tactics. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Milton.
So, Mr. Speaker, let's just level with Canadians. Something happened after January 14th that terrifies this government. They'll go to great extents to ensure that we never hear about it, but we will, Mr. Speaker. The Minister of Global Affairs indicated that with respect to the concerns of the OECD, she was going to assure them by saying that the process was both robust and independent. How can the minister tell us today that after they shut down the Justice Committee that this is anything towards robust?
Honourable Government House Leader.
It's important that Canadians know that when it comes to our parliamentary committees, they actually work independently of this place. There's members of Parliament that are from all organized parties that sit within these committees, including the Justice Committee. When we had witnesses appearing, we saw that members of other parties were also able to present themselves and ask questions of witnesses. It's important that Canadians also know that there is the Office of of the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner that's also looking into this matter, and the independence of the judicial system, because there is an ongoing court case. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable député de Charlesbourg.
The honourable member for Charlesbourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, the former Attorney General resigned from Cabinet because the Prime Minister's office was pressuring her into circumventing the law. The former President of the Treasury Board resigned because she had lost confidence, quote unquote. In addition, Gerald Butts and the Clerk of the Privy Council have also resigned. Strange. But the Prime Minister says there's no corruption in the SNC-Lavalin affair. If that's true, why all the resignations? Why won't he let the former Attorney General speak her whole truth? Why not? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, we know that the members on the Justice Committee have done their work. They sat for 5 weeks on this case. The Ethics Commissioner's Office is still dealing with this matter. We know there are many ways in which this work will be done, but the Conservatives don't want to talk about the over 900,000 jobs that have been created since we took office. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The honourable member for Charlesbourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, I'm glad she's talking about the Justice Committee. I've been on that committee for the past 5 weeks, and the Liberals have been controlled by the Prime Minister's office. They have been prevented from shedding full light on this matter. The former Attorney General had an order that prevented her from talking freely about everything, whereas other witnesses were unrestrained. Why has the Attorney General not been allowed to talk about the period from January 14th to mid-February? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, we waived Cabinet confidence and solicitor-client privilege so that the former Attorney General could share and give her evidence before the committee. I think that the member opposite knows from experience that it's their leader that gives orders to their members. But on our side, members can do their work properly, unfettered, and they will continue to do that work. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Chilliwack Hope.
Liberals on the Justice Committee wrote in a letter last night saying, quote, as committee members, we have achieved our objectives with respect to these meetings. Well, I'll say they have, Mr. Speaker. The Liberal objective during this whole scandal has been to cover up for their Prime Minister's corruption. Not only will they not allow the Attorney General to fully tell her story, they're shutting down the entire investigation. What is the Prime Minister so afraid of that he's willing to sink to these depths to cover up his corruption?
Honourable Government House Leader.
It's clear that the member has a copy of that letter but does not respect the choice of those members. But we also do know that when it comes to the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner, that office is looking into this matter. We also know that there is an ongoing court case. But, Mr. Speaker, what is clear is that the Conservatives are covering up the fact that they don't have a plan. They don't want to talk about the 300,000 children that have been lifted out of poverty. They don't want to talk about the 900,000 jobs that have been created by Canadians since this government came into office, because we invest in Canadians rather than have the approach of austerity of the Conservatives.
The honourable member for Chilliwack Hope.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's corrupt actions on the SNC-Lavalin affair have created a Liberal government cesspool of chaos and cover-ups. The former Attorney General has resigned. The President of the Treasury Board has resigned. The Clerk of the Privy Council has resigned. The Prime Minister's closest advisor has resigned. Other than that, it's going really well, and there's nothing to see here, Mr. Speaker. Today, they've shut down the investigation. Why are they so afraid of Canadians getting to the truth of this Liberal corruption?
Honourable Government House Leader.
Speaker, the Office of the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner is investigating this matter. We know that there is an ongoing court case. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, what we we will focus on is Canadians. We know that Canadians have created 900,000 jobs since we took government. We know that 300,000 children have been lifted out of poverty. We know that over 800,000 Canadians have been lifted out of poverty. We know that there's 9 million Canadians whose income taxes have gone down since we lowered taxes on middle-class Canadians by increasing them on the wealthiest 1% of Canadians. Mr. Speaker, it's Canadians who send us here. That's who we focus on.
Honourable member for Essex.
Mr. Speaker, this morning Liberal MPs on the Justice Committee shut down the study over the PMO's interference scandal for good. Their message is clear. Liberals don't believe that Canadians deserve to know what happened. Are they serious? The NDP strongly believes that Canadians deserve the truth. The former Attorney General wants to reappear before the committee and speak her whole truth. The Prime Minister is refusing to let this happen. The only way we will ever know the truth is through an independent public inquiry. Will the Prime Minister launch one now? Yes or no? Yes.
Honourable Government House Leader.
Justice Committee actually spent 5 weeks looking at this issue. They had witnesses appear throughout those 5 weeks. Every single meeting where witnesses appear were in public because Canadians should get to hear. And to ensure that Canadians were able to hear, this Prime Minister waived solicitor-client privilege as well as cabinet confidence to ensure that the former Attorney General could speak. Mr. Speaker, Canadians should also know that the Office of the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner is investigating this matter. They should also know that there is an ongoing court case. We on this side have respect and confidence in our institutions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Essex.
2 senior cabinet ministers, the chief advisor and the most senior public servant in the country have resigned. But Liberals want us to think there's nothing to see here. The ethics commissioner's duties are limited and investigating political interference isn't part of their job. Now that Liberal MPs have shut down the study at the Justice Committee, the only choice left is an independent public inquiry. Canadians want the truth. They deserve better than this. Will the Prime Minister allow an independent public inquiry into the interference scandal in his office? Yes or no?
Honourable Government House Leader.
The Justice Committee has looked at this matter. We know that the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner is investigating this matter. We also know that there is an ongoing court case. But let's talk about some numbers, Mr. Speaker. Over 900,000 jobs have been created by Canadians because of investments that this government made. 300,000 children have been lifted out of poverty because of the Canada Child Benefit. 9 million Canadians' income taxes went down because we lowered taxes on middle-class Canadians by increasing them on the wealthiest 1% of Canadians. 900,000 seniors are benefiting from the GIS increase, all measures that the NDP voted against. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable member for Durham.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Foreign Minister. Canada's reputation on the world stage is in tatters. It's so bad that the OECD is investigating the Prime Minister's conduct in the SNC-Lavalin matter. The Minister promised the OECD that there would be an independent investigation into SNC, but today the Minister's Liberal colleagues killed that investigation at the Justice Committee. How does that Minister feel when the Prime Minister throws her under the bus at the OECD?
Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, the rules-based international order and the multilateral institutions that underpin it are absolutely essential for the pursuit of the Canadian national interest in the world. That is why we are cooperating fully with the OECD in their work on this issue, and I have instructed my department and my staff to do so.
The Honourable Order. The Honourable member for Durham.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister can't have it both ways. She can't tell the OECD that they're cooperating on an independent investigation while her own colleagues are killing the investigation at the Justice Committee. That Minister knows that this type of conduct is more likely in Venezuela or in Russia, not in Canada. Will this Minister remain silent while her Prime Minister and her own colleagues are abusing the rule of law?
Honourable Minister. The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, as someone who has stood up for the people of Ukraine, as someone who has stood up for the Crimean Tatars, as someone who has stood up for the people of Venezuela, let me say it is...
Order. The honourable member for Barrie Innisfil and the honourable member for Durham will come to order. Order. I had no trouble hearing the question. I should be able to hear the answer equally well. Order. The honourable opposition House Leader will also come to order. The honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs has the floor for a few more seconds.
So let me say, it is a profound insult to the people living under the Maduro dictatorship, to the people living under Putin's dictatorship, to compare anything happening in our rule of law country with what
Could be one fewer question. Order. The honourable member for St. Albert Edmonton will come to order. L'honorable député.
The honourable member for Bellechasse-les-Etchemins-Lévis. Yes, Mr. Speaker, Canada is back on the international stage with a Liberal scandal. 4 resignations in under 3 months. It's a record. A British newspaper, The Guardian, says that this Liberal scandal is quite a spectacle. And the former Attorney General says the matter is serious and some questions remain unanswered. Why is the Prime Minister so determined to silence her? What is he covering up? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, we waived solicitor-client privilege and cabinet confidence so that the former Attorney General could share her evidence with the committee. The members of that committee asked to hear from a number of witnesses. They did appear. It took 5 weeks for all those meetings to be held. There's also the Office of the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner that is looking at this affair. We respect their work and we expect them to be able to complete it.
Mr. Speaker, we're hearing nothing but a consistent effort to try and change the channel from this tired, scandal-plagued government. Right. 2 Liberal ministers have resigned after losing confidence in this Prime Minister. His top advisor and best friend resigned. Now the clerk of the Privy Council resigned. Not surprisingly, the Justice Committee, led by the PMO, shut down the investigation. Exactly. The Prime Minister still denies any wrongdoing, but he's lawyered up and appointed an ad scam era Liberal to convince Canadians to trust him. What's this Prime Minister so desperate to hide?
Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the Justice Committee has looked into this matter. The Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner is investigating this matter. We know that there is an ongoing court case, Mr. Speaker. And I know that the Conservatives are surprised, but we've always focused on Canadians. That is who we are here to serve. 300,000 children lifted out of poverty because of the Canada Child benefit, tax-free, a benefit that the Conservatives voted against. 900,000 jobs created by Canadians because of our investments, measures that the Conservatives voted against. It's really unfortunate that Conservatives don't want to focus on Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Rosemont-La Petite Patrie. Mr. Speaker, in the space of 6 weeks, the Prime Minister lost his Minister of Justice, the President of the Treasury Board, his principal advisor, and the clerk of the Privy Council. Wow. So now he's hitting the panic button, and he's calling for help. And who picks up the phone? A former Liberal minister, a Liberal who sat at the cabinet table during the sponsorship scandal, a Liberal who was in cabinet when SNC-Lavalin was giving illegal Liberal donations to the party, a Liberal who next week will be fundraising for the Liberal Party. Mr. Speaker, does the Prime Minister think we're fools? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, the Ethics Commissioner is looking into this, and we will allow him to do his work. We respect his work. We know that the Justice Committee also did their work. Now, I understand why the Conservatives don't want to speak about Canadians. I mean, the NDP are even sharing their notes too. But since we were elected, more than 900,000 jobs were created for Canadians. More than 300,000 children were lifted out of poverty. 9 million Canadians saw their taxes lowered, and the NDP voted against that. The Honourable Member for Rosemont-La Petite Patrie. Mr. Speaker, do you remember the sponsorship scandal? Well, in Quebec, we remember. Basically, it wasn't complicated. It went like this. You can never do too much for the Liberal Party, friends, and you can change all the rules if it's for the Liberal Party. And today, once again, the same thing is happening. They are desperate to repair broken trust. And so the Prime Minister is calling a Liberal who was deputy leader when Paul Martin was dealing with Gaddafi for his executive friends in SNC. What are the Liberals so afraid of? Why are they refusing to have a public inquiry to get at the truth? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, the members of the Justice Committee considered this case. We know that the Ethics Commissioner is also considering this. We trust our institutions. But, Mr. Speaker, do you remember a time when the NDP was asking relevant questions? Well, we on this side of the House deal with relevant issues for Canadians. We are concerned about their problems, but obviously the NDP is continuing to vote against steps that help with housing, help with Canadians, help with children.
For St.